Moving ahead with our series on the solutions to the free LawPrep, in this video, we will be dealing with the fourth and the final set of analytical reasoning questions that you find in the free LawPrep mock test. You can access this test by visiting the official LSAT India website, discoverlaw.in.
As with the other questions of the analytical reasoning section, this time too, we will first focus on the conditions that are given to us, the passage that is given to us, and then proceed to the questions. Okay, you can now pause the video, try making sense of this passage and the conditions by yourself first, and then we'll go for it together. Right then, the passage reads that there are 9 city council members F, G, H, J, K, L, M, N, and O. Like always, don't focus so much on the names, it's sufficient to have just the first alphabet. Here are 2 plans for developing a vacant tract of land. The 2 plans are designated X and Y. So you have 2 plans, okay? The city council members votes in favor of either X or Y, but not both, and no member abstains, okay? Which means that you can vote for either X or Y, but not both. The plan that receives the majority of these votes is adopted. Now, if all of them are voting, then what is the majority? The majority is 5 or more. Okay. Now let's go ahead and look at the conditions. Now, when you look at each of the conditions here, if something, then something, if something, then something, you can see each one of them is following the template of if A, then B, where A could be either this or this or this or this or this or this, and then you have the then, which is followed by something else, which could be either this or this or this or this. Okay, so each one of these is following the template of if A, then B. Which means that, for example, let me give you a condition which says that if it rains, then the peacock dances. Okay. Now the question to you that I have is that if A, then B. Now what do you know about this on the basis of this? What can you conclude? In other words, on the basis of this, what can you say about this? If it rains, the peacock dances is the information that is given to you. On the basis of that, can you say that if the peacock dances, then it rains? This brings me to an important concept called directional conditions, which means that if A, then B is something that proceeds in only one direction. It tells you what happens if A, but it does not tell you as to what happens if B, which basically means that there is no information on what happens if B. Maybe if B then nothing, if B then C, if B then D, maybe if B then A, but that's not something that you can conclude on the basis of this. This is why a directional condition is a very important thing for you to understand. So let us take the first condition here and see as to how we can efficiently represent that. It says that if F and H vote in favor of X, then so does G, which means that if F vote for X, H votes for X, then G votes for X. I can write this as F, X and HX results in GX. Okay, this is a directional condition. But what you can see here is that in all of these conditions, right, in all of the conditions, you can see that everything relates only to X, right? It's not like something relates to X and something relates to Y. So a simple way of writing this, a simpler way of writing this would be to just let go of this because we don't need this. We know that it is dealing only with X. So you might as well just write it like this. Suppose there had been some conditions here that if there was a Y here in between, then maybe you could have retained this X in here. But since all of them relate to X, you can keep just this. Okay. Another question. Let me ask you this. You can see here, for example, that if F and H vote for X, then G votes for X. But what happens if only F votes for X or if only H votes for X? What do you think this would be? Look, always only take as much as is given to you. Nothing has been told to you in these conditions and in the passage about what happens if only F votes for X or if only H votes for X. So there's nothing you can draw on the basis of this. So what if this? Well, we don't know. Do not trouble yourself and get misguided and misled by entertaining such questions. Let us move ahead. So applying what we just saw, it is possible for us to get all of these conditions down in this format. Here we go. We have all the conditions here. And we have our master diagram. This is our master diagram, which we shall use in all of the questions henceforth for this set. Right, so the first question, try solving this by yourself and then we'll go for it together. Okay, the question reads, which one of the following set of votes in favor of X ensures that X is adopted? Now, this basically is asking you which of these sets ensures a total of 5 or more, because that's what the majority is, and then you go check each option, which one adds up to 5 totally. So let's do this together. So the strategy is very simple. You have the options, each of which contains 3, right? So in the option you have 3 that will come in here, but on the basis of these rules you will be able to add some more. So for example, if you have F and H, then you can add G to this. So we want that the total of the given plus the additional becomes 5. Let's try this option by option, one by one. Okay, so in the first option it is given to you that there are F, G and J. Now what can you infer here? If you look at the rules, what you can see is that if you have F and J, then you will get G and H, right? So if you have F and J, as you can see here, you will get an additional G and H. And if you see G, something we already had, so it's basically giving you only one extra element, right? So this is giving you a total of 4, whereas we need 5. Therefore we know that A is not the answer. Let's look at the next option. Okay, so here we are given F, G and M. If you have F and G, what does it give you? Well, you can't add anything here. G and M, it gives you nothing. F and M gives you nothing, which means that when you have these 3 here, you only have these 3, right? So again, you don't have a total of 5, which means even B is not the answer. Let's move ahead and look at the next option. Now, when you look at what option C offers you, then you have F, H and J. On the basis of this, from here, when you look at the rules, you can add a G to this, but that again is a total of 4 only when we actually need 5. So C is also not the answer. Let us go to the next option, hoping that this is the right answer. Option D. If we were right in these 3, then D is the answer, but let's just check that. We have F, J and K. Okay, so when you have F and J, then you from this rule additionally get G and H. Now you have 5, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and therefore D is the answer. Alright, question number 20. Try it yourself and then we'll go for it together. The question simply asks you, if F votes for X and G votes for Y, then which one of these must be true? Let us solve this together. Now, when you see that F has voted in favor of X, then when you look at the conditions here, then definitely you're going to look at these conditions in particular, because that's where you see F voting in favor of X. Okay, so when you know that F has voted in favor of X but G has not voted in favor of X, because that's what it means, GY means that G has not voted for X, it definitely means that this has not happened, right? Because you see, if this had happened here, if H and J had voted for X, then G would have also voted for X. It definitely means that these two have not voted for X, right? Because if H and J had voted for X, then G would have also voted for X. The other important thing is that if H and J have not voted for X, whom have they voted for? You had no option of not voting. There's no option of nota. You had to vote for either X or Y. That means these two have voted for Y. Okay. When you know that H and J have voted for Y, look at the options and see as to whether you found your answer. It's very simple. You can see here that since we know that H and J have voted for Y, here you can see the option B, wherein you can see that J has voted for Y. Simple. Let's move ahead. Question 21. Interesting question. Pause the video, try solving it by yourself, then we'll go for it together. Understanding this question is perhaps the most difficult part in this, right? It says if F is one of only two council members who vote in favor of X, which means there are only two people voting in favor of X. One of them, of course, is F, the second one is someone else, okay? Then what is the total number of council members, any one of whom could be the other member? It's saying what is the total number of council members who could be this other person, okay? Which means that you have a total of 9 council members, okay? And you want to know, apart from F, so there are 8 more, how many out of these 8 could be the other member that vote for this? What is the number of such people? Now the question becomes a little tricky because of the fact that there is an additional member that comes when you add certain characters. Like for example, if you would write J here, then that gives you one more. It gives you G and H. This makes it 4 in total. So we want to ensure that this is a character that we choose which does not lead to additional members joining in. Let us look at this. So you have 9 members in total. Okay, the first person voting for X according to the question is very obvious, is F. Now you have the remaining 8. Let's see what they can be. If you look at H, you can see that the moment you use H, you also get G. So if you put H in here, then you get this G free tagging along, and this becomes a total of 3. But we require to have only 2. So it cannot be H. Okay. Likewise, let us see if you put J in here. The same problem. If you put J, then you get G as well as H in addition to J. So that is the problem. So J also cannot be the answer. Now if you look at any of the remaining alphabets, if you look at any of the remaining members, that is, if you look at G, then there's nothing that tells you that F and G will give you something extra. F and G simply means F and G. Likewise with K, L, M, N and O, you can have these and this does not lead to an additional member. So the choices that you have are these 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, giving us D as the answer. So you see it was very simple. After you've struck off these 3, there are 6 that remain and therefore 6 is the answer. Right then, another interesting question. Pause the video and solve it yourself. Do not watch this video series with popcorn in your hands. It's not going to help you. You need to actively participate and solve the questions to be able to make some use of this lesson series. So the question reads, which one of the following members could be the only one who votes for Y? Which means that there's only one person voting for Y and everyone else is voting for X. So let's say if you pick the right option, let's say maybe J or M or N, whatever is the answer, let's say N is the answer. It means that N is voting for Y and everyone apart from N is voting for X. It's very important to understand this binary, right? If you only see it as who votes in favor of Y, you're not going to get the answer, right? It's important for you to understand that everyone else is voting for X and you understand that your rules are given in terms of X. Let's go ahead and see the options one by one. Okay, let's take H for example. So you know that H is voting for Y. That means everyone else in here is voting for X. Okay, now you know that if G and K vote for X, so you know that each one of these persons is voting for X, and if G and K vote for X, then H must vote for X. And here you're saying that H is voting for Y, which means this is not possible because whenever G and K are voting for X, which we have here according to the statement, then H also must vote for X. Therefore, H cannot be the answer, A cannot be the answer. Let's look at the next option. Let us look at M. Okay, if M is voting for Y, and everyone else is voting for X. Aha, that means L and N are also voting for X. But when N and L vote for X, then M also votes for X. So C is also not the answer. Similarly, you know that if M and O are voting for X, then N is also voting for X. That means this is not possible. So you must have understood the pattern by now. J is the only thing that you do not see here. So maybe anyone else could be voting for X. Everyone could be voting for X. But in no condition, no combination points towards J voting for X. So the only person who could be voting for Y is J. Your answer is B. Question number 23. It reads that if Y is adopted by a vote of 6 to 3, which means that there are 6Y and 3X, then which one of the following cannot be true? Pause the video and try solving it yourself, and then we'll go for it together. Okay, so what is the thing that you should pay attention to? You see, we don't want a case when there are 4x. The moment you can see a 4x, it could be a problem. So if you see, the 2 plus 2 is a bit of a problem. So you know that for 6y and 3x to happen, both of these cannot be true. So let's see if any of the options gives us this. You can see option B. It says F and J vote in favor of X. Because if F and J vote in favor of X, then you have G and H. That means you become 4X. Okay, so B is the answer.